Well, here we are at Sonoma Raceway GT World Challenge America. Qualifying 1 is about to get underway on a racetrack that, well, it's almost as green as the countryside around the racetrack. Temperatures, ambient temperatures and track temperatures on the low side. Nevertheless, as the temperature is going to build up, we would expect, let's say we're going to hope and see a very, very competitive qualifying session. So far, we've had 2 practice sessions, and both have been dominated by K-Pax Racing's Lamborghini Huracan GT3. One might say unsurprisingly, because Andrea Caldarelli, multiple champion Mr. Lamborghini, sharing the car with formerly Mr. Bentley. That's Jordan Pepper. What a strong lineup it is. Circuit length, we see 4.056 kilometers, 2.385 miles, and culminating in a lap which a rough time at the minute is about a 1 minute 36.7. The nature of this raceway, it's built on the side of a hill. So from start finish line, you make your way up through turns 1, 2, 3A, 3 and 3A, and then you drop downhill into turn 4. After turn 5, that's the end of segment 1. Then you go through the carousel, that's that downhill, falling away from your left-hand corner. Then the chute up to the hairpin at the top of the racetrack. From there, it's all the way downhill. The circuit includes the chicane, which is something when I raced here in 1986 didn't exist. And Sector 2 concludes just before that chicane. In fact, you can see it just there. Then the final part of the racetrack includes the hairpin bend, then the sprint through turn 12, back across start-finish line.
Got an excellent look around Sonoma Raceway. Hey, John, thank you so much for jumping in for me there. Excited to get this season underway. The first round of the Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, in a beautiful site to host the opening round of the season. My name is Ryan Marine. John Watson, you heard from just a moment ago, and Amanda Busick is down on the pit lane, about to go qualifying. 2 qualifying sessions. The first sets the grid for the first GT World Challenge America race of the weekend later on today, and the second one will set the field for tomorrow. Strategies for qualifying, John. How do you make sure that you have the tires up to temperature and clear track ahead of you in time to set that fast lap?
Well, these qualifying sessions are brief, so the first thing you have to guarantee yourself, let alone your team, is when you go out on track, you are cognizant of the fact that ambient and track temperatures are low. Consequently, your tire temperatures are not necessarily on the opening laps going to be at the full Pirelli recommended temperature range. So not make a mistake. Coming here through turns 1 into turn 2, track is actually drying. It was marginally wet earlier in this morning when we had some practice sessions for some of the other events here this weekend. So the track is improving. The temperature is climbing. But you've got a brief 15-minute window to get a lap time in. So don't make a mistake, first of all. Secondly, look for a clear lap. It's no point running around behind another car and struggling to find a way through. This is a tough racetrack to overtake on. You have to plan your overtakes. You've got to plan your lap. And when your car is ready, when you're prepared to make that lap that's going to give you the best possible time, you need to make sure the car's right, that you're right, and you've got a clear track in which to do it.
Well, it's great to have John Watson alongside here for our GT World Challenge America coverage this weekend. Unfortunately, our buddy Calvin Fish couldn't make the trip, a minor medical issue. We look forward to having Calvin with us for the rest of the season, starting in the next round at Circuit of the Americas. But now down to the third member of our broadcast team, and Amanda Busick. Welcome, Amanda.
All right. Hey, Ryan, and as the cars pull up here in pit lane, no one's going to be more excited to see their Ferrari pull in than this AF Corsa team behind me. They had extensive damages during testing yesterday. They were up until 2 o'clock this morning working on getting their car back. I went by and talked to Rosella yesterday, their team spokesperson. They were actually holding the car together, the front frame, with the tow straps. While everyone is excited to get here racing, they might be a little tired.
Yeah, that's a long night of repairs. Not the way you want to get your weekend started, John. A big hit for J.C. Sada. The good news, he is all right. That car will be ready to go for qualifying, but a big setback when you have a crash. In practice 1, they did not make the track for practice 2.
No, I mean, that's alluding to what I was mentioning a minute or two ago. Look, it's early March. Early morning temperatures, late evening temperatures are going to fall off the clock. So you've got that late morning to late afternoon where the track is going to be at its best. Those are all items that you have to bear in mind. And of course, you've just got to spend the 15 minutes of this qualifying session essentially running around and running around. Unless you've got a major problem, stay on track. Just work the tyre as safely as possible to get it to temperature. Once you've done that, then you can go about setting. You only need one fast qualifying lap on your session to guarantee your grid position. So unlike in other events where we amalgamate, certainly in some of the longer endurance events, where the times are amalgamated, especially in the SRO series in Europe, here it is the time set by the driver in his given session. Now there is a Pirelli slick going onto the back of the Mercedes, and go out of the pit lane on your out lap. Remember, those tires' temperature is going to be low, so take it easy.
It's good advice. Even with the tire warmers, these cars will be sitting for a moment before this session begins, and even with the tire warmers, the temps aren't quite up to the recommended operating temperatures, and this is a track that can be very slick, especially on cold tires that aren't up to pressure. Good look there at David Askew, who is, in addition to a driver, the team owner for DXDT Racing. This is a team that has expanded massively this year, running 3 cars in GT World Challenge America competition this year, paired with the Scotsman Ryan Diao. I know they have high aspirations. Moved into a brand new facility in North Carolina just over the winter, and have invested heavily in the engineering staff as well. So definitely one of the teams to keep an eye on, as is this one. Racers Edge Motorsports dominated much of the year last year with the pairing of Trent Hinman and Shelby Blackstock, but a brand new driver lineup this year. Some graduates from HPD's GT3 Driver Academy. Taylor Hagler, who will be partnered this weekend with Dakota Dickerson. She'll have a different co-driver at some of the other races, also a graduate of that Driver Academy. But this Acura NSX GT3 Evo has proven to be a really solid package over the last 3 years, racing in SRO America and abroad.
Yeah, Ryan, this car, we call it Honda in Europe. When we had our final round, the 9 hours at Kyalami in December, the Acura, or Honda, dominated until it got caught out in a pit stop where then it lost position. So the car is very competitive indeed, and it's a race car that is designed as a road car rather than a road car being adapted to motor racing. An outstanding car, and a car that is capable in the right hands of being a major threat here this weekend.
Now, we've seen that in the past for sure. It's a car to keep an eye on, a team that has had a great deal of success, the team's champions last year in this championship as well. You saw Taylor Hagler overtaken a moment ago. That is Russell Ward at the wheel of this Windward Racing Mercedes-AMG GT3 Evo. This team coming off of a victory at the 24 Hours of Daytona back in January. He's paired with Philip Ellis here this weekend, a driver with extensive experience racing in Europe in various championships, including SRO championships, but learning the North American scene, teamed with the son of the team owner, and this is going to be a car to keep an eye on for sure.
Well, when we were doing a little bit of observation earlier in the morning, it was a Mercedes that ended up the quickest overall. And again, it's the composition of the Mercedes-AMG GT3 that makes it such a universal car for every age, every skill, if you like. It is a very driver-friendly car. Coming into the carousel, of course, the notorious carousel. Remember it, unfortunately, rather well. From 1986, I lost the back of my BMW prototype and spun off, and that was my race finished. But the Mercedes, such a well-balanced, this is the epitome, in my view, of what a turnkey GT3 race car is all about.
The previous generation was really highly regarded as well, but it's only gotten better with the Evo package here over the last few years. Been very successful all around the world, and like I mentioned, picking up a win at the 24 Hours of Daytona in class going back to January. Russell Ward on his first flying lap, first qualifying session of the year. This is a team that we've seen in the championship on and off over the last couple of seasons, but really big aspirations here for 2021. Into the hairpin for the first time, and now around turn number 12. The first lap's about to jump up onto the screen.
Well, the time he will be aiming at is a 1:36.7. It's a 1:38.5, but for your first flying lap in different conditions to those that we saw from the running on Friday, that's a pretty good opening score. I think Russell Ward will be happy to start with that 1:38.5. Currently, he is 2.6 seconds quicker than the second place 91 Lamborghini Jeff Burton. So again, everybody going out, being sensible. We've just got over 10 minutes remaining. Ricardo Salas, as he comes up through turns 3A, down the hill into 4 in the Acura, followed by the 19 Mercedes, and that's going to give it a bit of a hurry up. So I'm not quite sure what Aaron Vogel thinks he can do, but he's found a way around the Acura because the Acura gave him race space. Good driving from Salas to allow that overtake to happen. Didn't affect the Acura's time, but allowed the Mercedes to go on and continue this lap. Losing position, track position early on in a lap is very frustrating.
It does appear, though, that there is some damage to the left front of Aaron's car, or maybe that's just the paint scheme. I'm not entirely clear. Let's take a look at a replay here. This might give us some idea. No, there is a little bit of contact, and you can see the bodywork flying with the back of...
That's a lot of...
Yeah.
Brian, that's a lot of bodywork. He clipped the left front under braking. I caught that as it was coming down the hill, but I didn't realize there is the remnants of his bodywork still on the racetrack. So not only are drivers having to fend with the cold track and cold tires, they've now got bodywork, carbon fiber bodywork, in or on the racetrack down at turn 10. So that will be a concern as the Mercedes makes its way into the pit lane, clearly aware that the damage to the car is sufficient to make sure they've got to repair that.
Oh, that is really frustrating. First qualifying effort for Aaron Vogel in GT3. It's her debut in this series. Has run GT4 cars in the past, but had really high hopes. And it's kind of a double whammy because this car is going to have to go out to qualify in the next session, which immediately follows this one with Michael Cooper at the wheel. And obviously, without some kind of repairs being made, is going to be definitely compromised. As we look at Corey Lewis here in one of the K-Pax Lamborghinis, these two Lamborghinis from K-Pax Racing, John, they've been 1-2 in the 2 practice sessions thus far. 2 all-pro lineups in these cars. It's great to have the pro class back. There's 4 all-pro lineups in the series here at Sonoma this year, but I think everyone is looking at these 2 K-Pax cars as the heavy favorites. Keep in mind, this is a team that is making a switch from Bentley machinery to Lamborghini, and actually a switch back to the States after campaigning primarily in Europe last year in GT World Challenge Europe Endurance Cup.
Just to go back to the Mercedes, you can see the amount of damage, heavy damage to that left front corner, and it'll have an effect, obviously. Clearly, that car isn't going to be able to continue in the session. But again, going back to the 2 K-Pax Lamborghini, Jordan Pepper, and what a star Jordan Pepper has developed into. First experience, of course, driving in a Lamborghini in this new championship here at Simona. An absolute star for K-Pax when they ran the Bentley Continental GT3s. Car not exactly settled coming up through turns 1 and 2. Back end moving around a little bit. But with Jordan Pepper, he doesn't leave an awful lot of performance on the table. It's all there. Now the drop down the hill into turn 4. This is where we saw cars locking up the rear. As it happened this morning earlier, they were both Lamborghinis. Andrea Caldarelli in car number 3. It is Caldarelli behind the wheel. I thought it should be. We did see Jordan Pepper, but look, 3/10 up. Mr. Lamborghini is at it again.
Oh, Andrea is a special talent to be sure. Really seems at home in these Lamborghinis. Not a lot of experience racing in the States outside of some of the Enduros in Florida, but by all accounts is loving this team and loving the chance to race here at a track like Sonoma Raceway. Purple in Sector 1, as you can see, 3/10 up on the previous best, which belongs to his teammate Corey Lewis in the sister car. Right now, it's Russell Ward in second. Michael Dinan is third, but keep an eye on this number 3 Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo through the chicane. Had to negotiate around a little bit of debris that's out there from that contact we saw earlier on. Even faster yet in Sector 2, John, Andrea is on a flyer.
Yes, I mean, he is doing what we've seen him do so many times certainly in Europe, and he understands this car so well, brings a lot of engineering knowledge to the team on top of his own driving skill. So we're going to see this car, currently number 3, it will go, well, 36.1, yes it is, but it's by 0.6 of a second. And that's from the second of the 6th of the 2 K-Pax cars. They've just dominated the 2 practice sessions, and to me, right now, it's not really a big surprise. They are the 2 outstanding or maybe notable pro teams in this event here this weekend. As you look at George Kurtz.
And George was already on track this morning. That's a bit of an advantage for him. He qualified on pole in the GT America powered by AWS qualifying session. That's a new championship to the SRO America paddock featuring GT3 and GT4 machines. Here comes George up the hill, and while we watch that Mercedes make its way around the track, let's get down to Amanda, who's found Ryan Dial.
Well, currently sitting in the 3rd spot is David Askew. His teammate Ryan Dial is watching along. And Ryan, as you approach qualifying, what do you find to be the most difficult part about Sonoma Raceway?
The hardest thing here is always tire degradation. I'm sure I'm not the first one to say this weekend. So the drop off from new tires in qualifying to the race pace can be, anywhere from 3 to 4 seconds. So typically the Mercedes is really good on long runs. I think we seem like we're pretty competitive even on the stickers right now. So goal is obviously race pace, but that's pretty typical of this place.
Good to hear from Ryan Dial. As Amanda mentioned, his co-driver David Askew 3rd in the Pro-Am standings, currently 7th overall. This is a sister car out of the same stable, George Kurtz, who, as I mentioned, was on pole earlier for GT America, and is a driver who has really stepped up his game. He's a businessman. He is the CEO of the CrowdStrike company you see on that car, but you can talk to him about his business, and he's excited about it, John, but when you talk to him about racing, he gets really fired up, and he's got high hopes for this season.
He's living the dream. He's in an outstanding GT3 car. I keep alluding to the fact that the Mercedes is such a nice car to drive. It isn't as edgy or twitchy as some of the mid-rear engine cars, and that builds confidence. And when you're coming into racing, that's at a slightly later age than some of the kids that are getting in almost before they even shave, then you want that confidence, and that's what we're seeing through turns 1, 2, up the hill, the transition. Then as you go up to the top, the highest point, then drop down into turn 4.
This is the Wright Motorsports Porsche 911 GT3R. Fred Pordad, last year's GT World Challenge America AM champion, making the step up to Pro-Am. He's got Wright Motorsports ringer Jan Heylen, former IndyCar driver and sports car driver extraordinaire, as his co-driver. We'll see Jan qualifying in session number 2 coming up. But Fred Pordad, in his 2nd year of GT3 running, he's got a lot of experience in single-make Porsche racing. Really seemed to take to it last year and came on strong as the year went on. They actually ran the last couple of races as a Pro-Am, having already clinched the AM championship. And paired with Jan Heylen, this is a very experienced Porsche team in Wright Motorsports. Every reason to believe this is going to be a pairing to keep an eye on in Pro-Am throughout 2021.
Well, of course, in a Porsche, I describe them as metronomic. They just keep going and keep going and keep going. Remember, this car made its public debut in 1963. I mean, it is an amazing evolution over design, because this car, when it was about a fraction of the size the GT3R is today. But what a wonderful engineering feat that Porsche and Stuttgart have done, and it's still an outstanding race car.
One of my favorite things about the 911 is you can see that heritage running through it. You look at a 911 from 1963, one from 1983, one from 1993, and you know you're looking at a 911 that's still true here today. Fred at the moment 4th on the time charts in the Pro-Am class, 8th overall, coming around to complete yet another lap, down to under 2 minutes remaining in this first qualifying session. Let's see, did Fred improve? He did not. His best, a 139.950, just a fraction off of David Askew's time.
Ryan, what is, just looking at timing and scoring, what is standing out to me is how quick, and I mean out of the box quick, the K-Pax Lamborghinis are. They're first and second quickest, and the gap between second and third, which is the 33 Mercedes, is 2.3 seconds. So those two Lamborghinis, they've not just a lockout in the front row of the grid. They are so far ahead of the competition at this point. Now, there's still a minute remaining, and anything can change. And then we've got practice qualifying 2 coming up very shortly. Nevertheless, it's just, to me, endorsing the level of performance that K-Pax have got with these Lamborghini Huracan GT3s and their pro driver lineup. These cars are rocket ships.
K-Pax is on home turf. Their shop is located in the industrial complex that's located here at Sonoma Raceway. And they did some testing here a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was last week even, a couple of days, I believe, to try and get their heads around this new car, get the new drivers into the team and up to speed on things. This is Frank Gannett here. Ian Lacey Racing making the step up to GT3. They've been a stalwart in probably GT4 America competition. Frank and his co-driver Drew Stavely have a ton of experience in GT4 cars, but they have made the big step to Aston Martin and GT3. Drew told me that the manual for this car was just massive. It took him hours and hours to get through it just to know what all the different switches do. At the moment, Frank at the bottom of the time charts, but right there in the mix, and very much getting up to speed with this new platform. As we look once again at the number 3 Lamborghini, this is Andrea Caldarelli, who has not improved his time in the first of the 2 sectors. Most of the cars have made their way to pit lane at this point, and it looks like Andrea might be following suit here before too long, safely at the top of the time chart, securing, it would appear, the first pole of the season in GT World Challenge America in 2021. And indeed, he does make that dive down to the pit lane, and it appears it'll be a Lamborghini sweep of the front row. Impressive debut with this car, John, for K-Pax Racing.
I mean, again, I repeat myself on saying, truly I am not surprised, because K-Pax, what a fantastic job they've done over the previous seasons with other manufacturers. This car is such a well-developed and sorted and a fast race car, and the driver lineup that are in these 2 cars, you couldn't look for a better driver lineup than K-Pax have secured. So they are in a very, very dominant position at this point in the season. Look, it's only the first race, first qualifying session for this first race coming up later in the day. Can I just say one thing about Sonoma Raceway? To me, this is the gateway to wine country, and that is recognized in the way that Sonoma has labeled some of the areas around the racetrack. Turn 2 is known as Chardonnay Village. Turn 3, Merlot Village. Turn 3A, Zinfandel Village. And then down to turn 5, Pinot Village. Just my little homage to the wine valleys of Northern California, Sonoma, Napa, and there are other. I'll stop now because I can talk about it all day.
There is a look at the results. We'll get your favorite vintage in a moment here, John. But K-Pax Racing 1-2, as you can see at the top. Windward Racing, courtesy of Russell Ward in third. Michael Dinan, very impressive in his first ever GT3 qualifying session to be just 2.4 seconds off of some very established GT3 stars. This is a young guy without a ton of experience. Did very well in GT4 a year ago, but still learning the ropes in GT3. Compass Racing rounding out the top 5, then a couple of Mercedes from DXDT Racing. I know this part of the country is special to you, John. You like coming out here. You like the wine country. Is there a favorite for you?
Well, and I like it, but let me just say, motor racing has got quite a close affinity with this region. Randy Lewis, a man who raced in Indy cars, he raced in Europe in the 80s. He has a wonderful vineyard making Lewis wines. Scott Pruitt, another great name in American racing in GT cars and not NASCAR, but another form of enclosed cars, whatever, I get it. So Scott Pruitt. Danica Patrick. What can you say about Danica's career? Indy cars, NASCAR. She has got a wine brand in the valley. And likewise, the daddy of them all, Mario Andretti, has got a vineyard, lends his name to a vineyard, which is maybe different price brands. Let's say Randy Lewis is the highest, along with Scott Pruitt. Mario would be maybe for the many, not for the few.
And don't forget Kevin Buckler, longtime team owner in this series with his Adobe Road vineyard just down the road. Hosted a nice banquet last night for members of the paddock. But enough wine talk for now. Let's get down to Amanda in pit lane.
Well, it's hard to believe that Andrea Caldarelli, it's his first time racing here at Sonoma Raceway. And Andrea, when you think of your track prep, why have you been able to find so much success here?
Well, I mean, the team definitely did a great job. The car was mega. Honestly, the first lap I thought we were going, a bit slower because the first sector was still a bit muddy from yesterday night rain. But the car was great. I felt a lot of grip, and the lap just came through.
I saw you speaking with Jordan prior to him getting into the car. What information did you relay to him?
Well, I told him about sector 1 because on my first lap I touched the curb by exit of turn 3, and there was still a lot of mud on the curb, so I had a big moment. So I slowed down, and then the lap after I push again. So I just give him a heads up on don't touch that curb.
Thank you, and welcome to America.
Thank you.
Great to hear from Andrea Caldarelli. Great to have him in the championship as well. He was the 2019 GT World Challenge Europe champion along with Marco Mappelli, and won the Endurance Cup as well as the Sprint, and first driver ever along with Marco to win both the Sprint and Endurance titles in the same year. Just a ton of experience racing all over the world. A lot of racing in Japan on his CV as well, in Super GT and Super Formula going back several years, and just a great addition. Wonderful to see K-Pax Racing able to pull in some big-time talent from the Lamborghini factory stable. As we get ready now for the start of the second session of qualifying. So this will be the second driver in the two-driver combos, and critically in the Pro-Am lineups. We saw the AMs out there in session number 1. Now the pros will come out, and John, I think this might be when we see some different names challenging towards the top, because there is some serious talent in the pro driver slots in these Pro-Am lineups. Dakota Dickerson is one young gun to keep an eye on. A ton of open wheel experience in the junior formula, has his eyes set on a career in single-seaters, but very talented in sports cars and limited appearances as well, and really cool to see him as part of this Racer's Edge program this year.
So we're looking at Dakota in the Acura up at the top of the circuit. That's the end of the drag strap here at Sonoma Raceway. Now the decline all the way down. We've got the chicane that was introduced a number of years ago, and that was to basically slow the cars down, because some of the Indy cars, for example, were getting up to 185, 90 miles an hour coming into a very tight hairpin bend. So that's the reason the chicane was introduced, to then accelerating hard off turn 11 all the way down into the braking zone. Yeah. Top speed, we've seen a glimpse of top speed from these cars one of the earlier sessions. Not quite sure whether that was being recorded on the lap, but it indicated around about 138 miles per hour. Suspect that was going up into the hairpin at the top of the racetrack.
Dakota Dickerson coming around now, starting his first flying lap. This is the 2018 F4 U.S. champion. He also won the F3 championship in 2019. Did some sports car racing last year, including in some prototypes, some smaller prototypes, but was part of HPD's GT3 Driver Academy. Did very well there, and that's one of the reasons we see him in this car alongside Taylor Hagler, who was part of that academy as well. He will be jumping in and out throughout the course of the season. Jacob Abel, another graduate of that academy, will be the second driver alongside Taylor throughout the course of the season. Talking to John Meraki, the team owner, the plan is to have all three together for the Indianapolis 8-hour at the end of the year, but that's not totally firmed up just yet. Nevertheless, it's a great initiative from Honda and Honda Performance Development here in the States. A lot of manufacturers, especially in Europe, have these junior driver programs, and it's really reaped lots of benefits, bringing these guys through the ranks and having that institutional knowledge when they reach the top level, and Honda is looking to emulate some of that here in the States.
Yes, I think all these young driver programs, we have it in Europe, and we're finding in Europe where many young drivers are stalling out, for example, in their career path in single-seater racing. They're being picked up by the the manufacturers or through their satellite operations to bring them forward. And the current generation of, if you like, headline GT3 drivers will eventually be superseded by these youngsters coming along. So you need to keep the process. You've got to propagate the process to make sure that you've got the right talent at the right time. When they're peaking in their career, you want them in your team.
This is Drew Stavely, co-driver to Frank Gannett, Ian Lacey racing the team. The lone Aston Martin Vantage AMR GT3 in this field. Drew was the 2019 Pirelli GT4 America Sprint AM champion, got bumped up to Pro last year, finished second in the championship there to Michael Cooper, who he will be competing against this year here in GT World Challenge America. Stavely right now third fastest, just bumped down to fourth as Robbie Foley came across the line, jumps up to second on the time charts. Dickerson the fastest, very early stages here by about 0.5 of a second. Foley back in second now. And Michael Cooper out in that damaged Mercedes. We saw the contact with Aaron Vogel in qualifying session number 1. Evidently they felt all right sending that car back out, and Michael is out on the track right now, having currently set the third fastest time, but not many cars have come across that timing line just yet, so we'll have to keep an eye on that as we look at Robbie Foley. Faster than his previous best through Sector 1. That's why it shows up green on those slash marks on the side of the screen. And purple means overall best. Yellow means did not improve. Colin Brown now at the top of the charts with a purple in Sector 2. Personal best in Sectors 1 and 3. That's got the 04 CrowdStrike Mercedes-AMG GT3 Evo at the top of the charts.
And what Colin Brown has done is put a time in almost identical to that we saw a few moments earlier from Andrea Caldarelli in the K-Pex Lamborghini. So a combination of things. Track conditions, because it's getting warmer, because the track is cleaning up after all that rain. The track would have been rather green in the terms of motor racing. When a track is not grippy, it's always on a green side. Now the track is getting more rubber laid down, the grip is coming to the teams. So that time from Brun in the number 4 Mercedes-AMG GT3, very good time indeed. And Dickerson, who had been the quickest initially, is now just that half a second behind the Mercedes. As we go back to the 96, this is Foley in third position. As we go there, it is the quickest of the cars. Colin Brun. No surprise. Confidence built. Performance has come. You can extend your commitment into that little bit later and deeper in braking zone. For example, into turn 12, you get on the throttle that little bit earlier to drive the car out. Of course, these cars have got ABS braking, so that's an adjustable item in the cockpit. They've got ABS, they've got traction control. You can adjust them in or out as your preference prefers. And most drivers normally like to dial those assets out because they want to have the maximum feel. Jordan Pepper, need to keep an eye on this car because Jordan Pepper, without question, is a driver who is able to match anybody. Fastest in Sector 1. Personal best Sector 2. This is probably going to be the first driver we have seen to break that 1 minute 36 seconds. He comes across the line and he doesn't quite. That's as close as you can get without actually breaking through it.
Oh, 136.026. That was, as you said, as close as you can get just about to cracking that 136 mark. And I totally agree with you on Jordan Pepper. I thought he was a revelation last year. Stirring drive at Bathurst to help the Bentley team, M-Sport Run team, take the win there. Really good in difficult conditions at the beginning of the Indianapolis 8-hour last year, and some good drives as well in GT World Challenge Europe. As we take a look at Philip Ellis, this is the car he shares with Russell Ward. Mentioned this Windward Racing team picked up a big win at Daytona earlier in the year. As we've got problems here, Jan Halen off the track at the bottom of the screen. We saw the Porsche from Wright Motorsports just a moment ago, and here's a problem for one of the Lamborghinis as well.
Well, that's down at the chicane, and I'm not quite sure. There's the Porsche rotating, and that was a pretty big, and does he keep it off the barrier because the grass is wet from all the rain that fell overnight, so little way of retarding. I think maybe got away with it, but it's so easy. Once you lose that grip, then there's not much grip available for any of these drivers once you lose it in that fashion.
It's a big surprise to see a mistake like that from Van Halen, an extremely experienced driver in these GT3 cars. This is Giovanni Venturini in one of the K-Pax Lamborghinis, currently third on the leaderboard, was up a little bit higher than that just a moment ago until Jordan Pepper came through with that fast lap. So it's Pepper from Brown from Venturini at the moment. Halen, despite that spin, is currently fourth. Ryan Dial holds down the fifth spot, but it's cool to see a mix of Pro and Pro-Am up at the top of the leaderboard here as it stands. Venturini, extremely experienced Lamborghini driver, a factory driver, but not much experience here at this track until they went testing last week.
What's interesting, and you mentioned it just before the session got underway, this is a more competitive session across the field. There is under a second covering the top 6 cars. In qualifying 1, there was a 2-second gap between second and third. So clearly Q2 is offering up closer times than we saw in Q1. There is the number 3, Jordan Pepper, gone fastest yet again in Sector 1, a 32.0 in Sector 1. So I'm not surprised. Jordan Pepper, I mean, I think the guy is just outstanding. South African driver, came across from his home country and immediately made a major impression, got signed up by Bentley, now continuing with the Lamborghini brand. Nothing left on the table as he comes out of the chicane. Slightly down in that second sector. That's going to take away any likelihood that he's gone into the pit lane, maybe as a consequence.
Yeah, I think you're right. These drivers have on their dash in many cases a relative screen showing how their lap time is faring compared to their best of the session, and if it looked like it was not set to improve, maybe it's best just to bail into the pit lane, not risk anything. That car currently fastest on the leaderboard, so that's what they've done. This is the AF Corsa Ferrari that we heard Amanda talk about early on, and it's just great to see them on track. This car was in tatters when we went by the garage yesterday, really torn up. Heavy impact when JC Sada had a crash in practice 1. Did not get back on track at all yesterday. This is the first time they were able to get to the track since that accident, and there was some question about whether or not they would be able to, so it's great that they've been able to answer the call. Conrad Grunwald is the driver in the car at the moment, the only AM-class car in the field, but 12th overall, ahead of a couple of Pro-Am entries, which is good to see. And again, Giovanni Venturini still on track, trying to find a little bit more speed with just under 4 minutes left here in Q2.
This lap isn't going to get it done, Ryan. This is maybe an out lap for Venturini. Look at the top speeds. We're going to have a look and see fastest. Well, Foley in the BMW, 143 miles an hour. That's impressive. Braun in the Mercedes second. Venturini third. I mean, those are pretty impressive speeds, and Venturini has brought the number 6 Lamborghini back into the pit lane with just over 3 minutes remaining. One would suspect that is going to be the end of that car's run. Be little time remaining to get back out on track, do an out lap, and then go on to a flying lap.
Just a few cars left on track. This, of course, is one of them. Also, the Racer's Edge Acura still running. The Reardon Racing Lamborghini with Vesko Kozarov currently 11th quick, still out on the track. But this is Drew Stavely down at the bottom of the time charts right now. But this is a team without GT3 experience. Neither of its drivers had any GT3 experience until this weekend, and some minimal testing in the build-up to this. Drew is a very accomplished driver, but definitely everybody with Ian Lacey Racing still trying to get their heads around this car. And I thought maybe they would stay out on track, John, just because of how unfamiliar they are with the package, but electing instead to come in. I thought maybe the extra laps, a little extra mileage, you might learn a thing or two when you're so new to the car that you're running.
I mean, that's an option. They could have continued for one final lap. But I would say that in this early phase, it's a work in progress for the team, simply because learning one of these cars, you mentioned that the manual that you get with the car, it's almost like learning to fly an aircraft, the manual you get with one of those babies. So a lot has got to be learned. And if you feel maybe there's something not quite right, rather than driving through it and finding an issue, come in, discuss it with the team, make an adjustment, The car currently is the slowest of the 14 cars in the field. So if they were going to make an improvement, probably in that final lap wouldn't have seen a massive change. So it's a work in progress, and every time they get behind the wheel of the car, they will pick up knowledge, and that will take them forward.
So the last car still out on track turning laps is this one, Reardon Racing, longtime team in SRO America and previously Pirelli World Challenge competition. Laura Tallman, the team owner, and longtime customer Jeff Burton electing to make the step up to GT3. And Vesko Kozarov is the pro in this Pro-Am lineup. He has been the driver coach for Reardon Racing in their club level racing for quite some time, as well as in their pro level racing here at SRO America, and has some experience in this car just going back to testing, but not a whole lot in the Lamborghini platform. Still getting used to that to some degree. Born in Bulgaria, but has lived in the States for quite some time, and a pretty impressive resume. He's been around and driven a lot of different cars, and that's useful, John, when you're learning a new one. If you're used to going through that process of sorting out a new car, it makes it a little bit easier when you get to the next one you've not driven before.
I would say right now the car looks a little bit on the nervous side, and I get the feeling that Kaczmarov is maybe trying to drive through those issues. So again, it's about learning the car. You can see it's just coming through the chicane. The entry to the chicane compromised his exit. So it's all about time behind the wheel, learning all about the car. The session is going to come to conclusion before he takes the checkered flag, but he will be able to continue. So currently in 11th position. His best time is a 138.8 to date. So he will look for a improvement, 138 on the clock to watch. Has he made an improvement? Well, he's made 0.3 or so of an improvement, but not enough to make any positional change for the number 91 Lamborghini.
Still good to see the improvement as the session goes along. A team that is learning the package and seems to be making some progress. Vesko Kozarov will roll off on Sunday's race from the 11th position. Here are the results from qualifying 2. So the drivers on the right of the screen were the ones behind the wheel for this session. Andrea Caldarelli, the drivers on the left, excuse me. So Jordan Pepper, quickest overall, able to secure the pole by 0.3 of a second over Colin Brown. Really impressive from last year's runner-up in the Pro-Am Championship and a Pro-Am runner again. Giovanni Venturini third and Halen in fourth despite a spin. Ryan Dial makes it 2 Mercedes-AMG GT3s from DXDT Racing inside the top 5. Then we go down to Dakota Dickerson from Racer's Edge. Philip Ellis from Windward slots in 7th. Matt McMurray, Robbie Foley, and Michael Cooper completing the top 10. And notably for Michael Cooper, doing so with a damaged race car after contact in session 1 from Aaron Vogel. Well, 15 minutes, 2 15-minute sessions of qualifying complete. John, what do you think we can take away from what we've seen looking ahead to a pair of 90-minute races later on this weekend?
Well, looking at Q1, you have to say it looks like a K-Pax demonstration. But for the second race, it's going to be a much, much different deal because everybody is much more, well, you've got covered by 1 second, the top 6 cars covered by 1 second. It was nowhere near as close as that in Q1. So we're going to see, I hope, at different points, because we'll have different strengths from different drivers in their cars as that event or those events get underway. The start will be crucial. It is a difficult circuit to overtake on, so if you're at the front of the grid, watch for a lot of shuffling going through turn 1, turn 2, up the hill, into turn 3. Please, please, everybody, and I say this every race I broadcast on, remember, the race is not won in turn 1 or the first lap. It's won when the checkered flag comes out. What a magnificent vista we just saw there, looking down from the highest point of the racetrack, now back into the pit lane. There is the 99 Lamborghini being pushed back. That car, this is actually
Yep, that's Giacomo Altoe in the 9. They ended up back in the 13th spot. Real quick, want to get down to pit lane to hear from a pretty happy man, I have to suggest. Amanda Busick is standing by with with Darren Law from K-Pax Racing, who has to like what he's seen.
Oh, Ryan, and he is ecstatic in their own backyard. K-Pax Racing takes the pole at the first race of the season. And Darren, when you look at the effort by your drivers, how important is it to be in that pole position for race day?
Well, actually, it's really critical for us. Mega job by the drivers in qualifying, pole for both races, and the team as well with the new cars this year. But it's critical here. There's not a lot of places to pass, and you've got to have good position in qualifying.
John Waddy was just talking about the start of the race and how crucial that is. Do you have a strategy going into that?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to reveal that on TV, but the key is that we start up front and we stay out front because, like I said, it's really hard to pass here. But cars are good and the drivers are on it, and we're really proud of the whole organization right now.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Darren Law has to be thrilled. You can see it from under the mask. He is smiling. A lot of changes for that team from year to year, but they seem to be right back where we expect them to be, a championship caliber team everywhere they race.
Ryan, just looking at that image, that's where I would be wanting. If I could stand around the racetrack and watch this race, that's where I would stand, because you're seeing the cars coming through turn 1 into turn 2, and that's going to be very congested.
So highlights from a pair of qualifying sessions. Russell Ward hustling it through the carousel. Contact there. Aaron Vogel into the back of the racer's edge car. You can see the result. It definitely hurt both Aaron and Michael Cooper in their qualifying efforts. They've got some work cut out for them. There's the number 6 Lamborghini from K-Pax Racing. Now the 3 figuring towards the top in both of the qualifying sessions. K-Pax very happy with the way things have unraveled so far. This is Jan Halen going for a spin, but he'll still line up 4th despite it all. A great qualifying effort from him in the Wright Motorsports Porsche 911 GT3R. A fun qualifying session, a couple of them, and I think that gives us an idea of what to expect when we get to the first races of the 2021 season. Big thanks to Amanda Busick down on pit lane. A great debut from her. Really appreciate the contributions from John Watson as well. Talk to you later on this weekend with more SRO America action here on GT World.